Welcome to another episode of NK Unfolds. I'm your host, Nolan Chris, and today I have an adventure story that'll make you question what's real and what's not. It's called The Whispering Mountain. So grab a seat, settle in, and let's unfold this together. Our story begins in the small town of Halston, tucked away in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. A place where time seems to move at a slower pace, and the air is thick with mystery. There were always whispers about the mountain that loomed over the town, the towering peak known as Whisper Ridge. Locals would tell tales of strange sounds, eerie winds, and voices that echoed from its summit, though none could explain where they came from. But for one man, this mountain wasn't just a place of rumors. It was a call he couldn't ignore. Meet Ben Carter. He was a journalist, a man who lived for stories that defied logic. He'd heard about the strange happenings on Whisper Ridge, but what intrigued him most wasn't the eerie whispers themselves, but the fact that no one had ever gone to the top and returned with a clear explanation. It was as if the mountain played tricks on your mind, making you forget things, making you question your own senses. One afternoon, with his backpack packed with camera gear and supplies, Ben decided to hike up the mountain. He was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant confronting something beyond human understanding. As he began his ascent, the weather turned oddly still. The air grew heavier, and the distant whispers grew louder, almost as if they were following him. He couldn't tell if they were coming from the wind, or if the mountain itself was speaking. Ben, in a deep, slightly breathless voice, "What the hell? Who's out here?" But there was no one. No other hikers, no sounds of wildlife, just the wind and the whispers. Closer now. They seemed to wrap around him, almost like they were guiding him. The further he climbed, the more disoriented he became. His sense of direction started to slip. A trail that had been clearly marked moments before now seemed to vanish into the forest, replaced by a disorienting series of twists and turns. Hours passed. Maybe even days, he couldn't tell anymore, and still, the summit was nowhere in sight. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a figure, standing in the distance. Ben squinted, wondering if it was just his mind playing tricks, but the figure remained, a silhouette against the backdrop of the ridge. Ben's heart raced as he approached. Was it another hiker, a person in distress? But as he drew closer, the figure didn't move. It stood perfectly still. And that's when he saw something strange. Ben, in an alarmed whisper, "Wait, that's not right." The figure wasn't a person at all. It was a statue, an ancient stone carving of a man, staring blankly into the horizon, his face weathered and eroded by time. It seemed out of place, an artifact that didn't belong on this mountain. But as Ben stood there, his breath caught in his throat, because in the stone's empty eyes, he could swear he saw something staring back at him. A voice suddenly pierced through the silence, clear, direct, and undeniably human. Voice whispering urgently, "Turn back." Ben spun around, but there was no one. His pulse quickened. He had to get out of here. Whatever was happening, it wasn't safe. He turned and sprinted back down the trail. But the mountain seemed to shift around him. Paths that were once familiar, now twisted into new, impossible configurations. The whispers turned into laughter, distant and mocking, as if the mountain itself were playing a cruel game with him. Or was it days again, passed before Ben stumbled into a clearing, and there in the center was a strange sight, an old campfire still smoldering, as if someone had been there just moments before. The air was thick with tension. Something wasn't right. As Ben approached the fire, he noticed something even stranger. A piece of paper, half burned, lay beside the embers. He picked it up, scanning the faded handwriting. It read, "Don't follow the voices, the mountain remembers." Just as Ben read the final line, the whispers grew louder, more intense, and then everything fell silent. A weight of silence that stretched on. The mountain was watching. He felt his chest tighten. He wasn't sure how long he stood there, lost in the moment, but then a strange realization hit him. The trail, the clearing, it was the same one he had passed hours before. The mountain had brought him back to the start. Ben choking on his breath. "No, it can't be." Ben was stuck. caught in a loop, a trap set by the mountain itself. It wasn't just the voices that were confusing him, it was the mountain, shifting time and space around him. The trail he thought he'd lost was never gone. It was always there, always just out of reach. Suddenly, the figure of the stone statue appeared again, this time directly in front of him. Voice now clear, commanding, "You are part of the mountain now, Ben, just as they all are." And in that moment, Ben realized the terrible truth. The mountain didn't just echo voices. It absorbed them. Every lost hiker, every adventurer who had come before him, had become part of the mountain's whispered legend. They were all trapped here, their memories twisted and forever intertwined with the land. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Ben Carter. Some say he finally found his way down, but lost his sanity along the way. Others believe he's still out there, wandering the mountain, his voice joining the chorus of whispers that call out to anyone foolish enough to follow. Ben Carter. But one thing is certain, Whisper Ridge is no ordinary mountain. It's a place where time bends, reality warps, and every adventurer becomes part of its story. Just remember, the next time you hear a voice in the wind or feel the strange pull of an unexplored path, you may want to ask yourself, is it the mountain calling you or something else?